I think that's a move that really puts them in the driver's seat. It's going to be an even tougher division in 2023 than it was in 2022 because the Phillies are probably going to be more competitive when it comes to the division title.
I know this is sort of a cliche question, but who was the guy that you're like, ah, man, I sat there and listened to that guy. That made me want to do this job.
Well, Harry Carey is the reason why I'm sitting here. There's no question about it. He was number one. The way that he called the games on WGN, it was unbelievable. I mean, you never, as a kid especially, you never really knew that the Cubs were out of it.
All right, baseball is not boring in large part because of excellent broadcasters, and we have an excellent broadcaster on with us, Wayne Randazzo. Obviously, you know him from his work most recently with the Mets, but now, is this the first interview you've done, Wayne, since you became the Angels guy, or no?
First on-air interview, yeah. I've done some with the newspapers, but this is the first time talking about it on the air.
This is all that matters. So that newspaper, I don't know if you know this, newspapers are dead. So there you go.
I've heard that. Yeah. Well, one of them was a website masquerading as a newspaper.
Well, all right. Courtney's with us. Hey, Courtney, what's going on?
It's a pleasure, Rob. How are you?
Oh, I'm super. Courtney's still riding high from the big Pedro Grafal interview, Wayne. Her brand has never been hotter. She did an excellent job. And also we were totally sold on Pedro being a good manager. That's all it takes, Wayne.
Good. That's good. The White Sox, they could use it.
By the way, so you went to college in Naperville, correct?
Yeah, North Central College.
So this is the question that nobody else cares about but me, which is, do you know where the cornfield is in Naperville?
The cornfield?
A cornfield. So I went out, I did this Hall of Fame ballot reveal with DB Sweeney, and DB was like, I found a cornfield in Naperville. So we go out to Naperville and we go into this like housing complex, where's the cornfield? Then we get to the edge of it and it's this massive cornfield. Yeah. Like, that's all I know about Naperville, that I like basically filmed a Hall of Fame ballot reveal in Naperville.
No, I didn't realize there was a cornfield there, but I'm not surprised. It's to the point in the Chicago area where the corn begins. So it might be the first cornfield as they move out, and you move out further west and south, and there's a lot more corn where that came from.
I feel like though that maybe this is a stab in the dark, that we did this filming of Shoeless Joe Jackson, maybe the exact spot where you partied in college and corn. That's what college kids do. I mean, they go to a cornfield and there you go, hang out. I mean,
not this college kid. I stayed far away from cornfields. I grew up pretty close to the city, and even though my family then moved pretty far out to the suburbs to the corn, as I got older, I never really embraced the corn, the way that I maybe should have.
No, you're a city guy, but now you get to live the life of 75 degrees every single day. The only time I've ever seen the bad weather of all the days that I've covered games out there, and maybe you're the exact same way, Wayne, is it rained one day. It rained a little bit. They had to postpone the game, and they actually brought in a helicopter because they had no way of draining the field. There you go. There's what you have to look forward to. One day of rain and a helicopter.
All right. Well, I'll be ready for it. And hopefully, very little rain in my future here, being in LA and Orange County with the Angels, and it's cool. It's really an exciting opportunity, and I can't wait to get out there and get started.
Well, Rob, I mean, you know how it is for both of us, Boston and Chicago. I mean, April and even into May here is absolutely miserable.
It stinks.
It's terrible.
It terrible. Stinks. Like, and Wayne, I mean, you do this in New York for the last few years, and so it is going to be different for you, I would imagine. And I don't know if the newspaper folk asked you this, but you went from, and Steve Cohen obviously is the guy who is the talk of baseball, and he had been so the years past, but not so much as he is right now, this offseason. So as much as this is an awesome opportunity, you must be looking at what's going on with the Mets and like, holy mackerel. I mean, did you see before we get into the broadcasting thing, having been with the Mets for the last few years, did you see this coming, this shock and awe kind of offseason?
Yeah, I think after how last season ended with the team getting knocked out early and with the division title falling out of their grips, Steve Cohen's going to do what it takes to win. I mean, he cares about one thing, and that's pleasing the Mets fan base with the championship team, and he's going to go after it with everything he's got. I mean, for everything you've read about this guy and everything that you know about his work in the hedge fund world, this is who he is. He's going to go after exactly what he wants, and he's going to do what he can. I mean, this is a different sort of thing than what he's used to, because all the money and all the things that he's putting into the resources, they don't guarantee a championship. They don't guarantee being number one, but they guarantee you a spot at the table. And I think that the Mets are going to have that spot when it comes to October next year too. I mean, assuming this Correa thing goes through, I think that's a move that really puts them in the driver's seat. It's going to be an even tougher division in 2023 than it was in 2022, because the Phillies are probably going to be more competitive when it comes to the division title than they were this past season. So it'll be interesting, but I think the Mets realize that they just need to get in the playoffs, and they've got a lot of the tools that they need to get there. And I'm not surprised at all that he's attacked this offseason with the fervor that he has.
One of the things that obviously you look at, sure, you're putting them in the rear view, but man, to be able to call games for the best player on the planet, I scratch that, the two best players on the planet. I mean, I know that it's a great job in a lot of different ways, but and maybe it's only for this year with Ohtani, I don't know, but still, I mean, that is, you've called a lot of great games with a lot of great players. And we get excited every time that, we see the glimpses of Ohtani come to whatever ballpark we're in. But for you, that when you're sort of soaking in this new job, that must have been like, yeah, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, being in the National League East, you don't see the American League West teams very often, except Houston, because we saw them at spring training. But other than that, that's a division the Mets didn't play a lot, and we didn't see a lot. So I've seen Mike Trout play in person. I've been doing this for 8 years now at the major league level, full time. I've seen Mike Trout play in person twice.
Oh,
and I've seen Shohei Ohtani play in person once, and that's without pitching. So I haven't even gotten the full Ohtani experience. So it's a huge thing to be able to see those guys play every day. And I really do look at it as being the steward of the night for that game, or the steward of a season for that team, and to be really responsible for the voice and the calls and the broadcasts for these two all-time great players is very exciting. You got a taste of it with Jacob deGrom in New York, and how special it was to see deGrom's career unfold and become the best pitcher on the planet and win those Cy Young awards and do what he was doing. And it really just felt it was a special thing to be able to see Jacob at the height of his powers. And it's going to be like that watching Trout and Ohtani every day. And it's a job, you go after, in a situation you go after no matter what. But with those two guys, it certainly is an extra layer of a good thing to have those two guys.
That is crazy. You only see those guys like a couple times. But it makes a lot of sense. But it is weird. It's and we look forward to, as in baseball, I think we need more of this, where, hey, I remember when you're a kid, I got this ticket, like Courtney. So what was it when you were a kid, Courtney, you go to the White Sox games?
Oh, always. Yes.
Yeah.
Always.
So what you said, make sure, Dad, that we get tickets to this guy's game, right?
Yep. Always.
Was it Lamar Hoyt? No, that's good.
Rob, why are you aging me right now?
I'm just joking.
Shame on you.
I'm joking.
Not Lamar Hoyt.
Right.
But I mean, honestly, my biggest thing when I would go to Sox games as a kid is I wanted to see Pudge Rodriguez. As you know, I've said this to you many, many, many times. It's just, that was the guy I wanted to see. So I was going to terrible Ranger games. I was going to a ton of I was thrilled when he signed with the Tigers, because I'm like, God, he's going to be at Sox Park so many times. I have so many opportunities to see him. So 100%. And Rob, as you know, we recently talked about Ohtani and Trout, and you said they need to be in the playoffs this year.
Oh my goodness. That was my wish for 2023. That was my one wish.
Yeah, so it's mine now too. That would be a good thing. I mean, yeah, Trout's only played once, and it was a quick 3 games and out, and then Ohtani's never been in. So Yeah, they deserve to be on that stage, and I think the Angels have done a good job this offseason filling out their roster and just trying to have a little, a little more major league talent on the roster and a little deeper roster compared to what they've had before. Because anytime they've had injuries, it's really wiped them out. They haven't really been able to count on Anthony Rendon, and hopefully some of these new guys they brought in, Drury and Renfroe, and adding Tyler Anderson to the starting rotation, just good ball players that can come in and help them win more games. And I think they expect to be in the playoff picture for the upcoming season, and we'll see if it shakes out that way.
I think it's a great division. I mean, we've had this conversation too. What's the best division? You mentioned the NL East. Sure, you have the top heavy, the Braves, the Braves, the Mets, and the Phillies. But the NL West is sneaky, man. Like, okay, the Rangers. I had on CJ Nikowski, and I'm saying, hey, I'm sold on the Rangers. Even though I looked it up today, they bizarrely have like 60% of their payroll tied up in 44 guys, which is never a good thing.
Yeah.
But I like their team. I like the Houston Astros. I like the Seattle Mariners, and you already sold. When it's not hard, you come on here, you sell me. I'm all of a sudden I'm placing bets on that team. So
well,
I did it with Pedro Grafal.
Well, Pedro, come on, that's my new best friend. But Wayne, when the Angels do make the playoffs, just know that Rob manifested that back in December, and he's the man. He's the man responsible. So
a lot of teams get in, and it's. I think there are good teams in the American League, but outside of the Astros and maybe the Yankees, are there any really strong teams? Toronto's good, and Tampa Bay could be good, and Seattle and the teams you mentioned in the AL West. Maybe there's a team in the Central that can wake up and make some noise. But generally, I think it's wide open. So yeah, if the Angels have a good year and you get into that 85 to 90 win window, then you're going to have a chance to get in. So, we'll see how it goes over the first half of the season. And if the Angels can stay healthy, maybe they are one of those teams. And maybe Texas does make a leap forward. I mean, they lost a lot of games this past year, but they've certainly bolstered their rotation even beyond just signing DeGrom. So we'll see. I think that there's a good chance that the Angels are able to be in the mix, and we'll see if they're able to end up there.
Courtney, before I start geeking out on broadcast questions, because I love the art of broadcasting. You got any questions, Courtney? I don't want to jump in.
I mean, what don't I want to ask Wayne, right?
Okay.
I mean, I guess the very first question that comes to mind is you were on the call for Albert Pujols' legendary 700th home run. That's huge for you, of course. What were some of your impressions during that? What was going through your head while you were watching Albert Pujols hit that 700th home run?
You just think about history, and being a part of it in that way is really hard to believe. It's for all the things that happen over the course of your baseball career, and being all the pinch me moments. I was in my first job in pro ball was in AA Mobile, and they opened the Hank Aaron Museum at Hank Aaron Stadium one year, and they put Hank Aaron's childhood home on the grounds of the stadium, and to celebrate the opening, they basically invited the Baseball Hall of Fame. So Aaron was there, and Willie Mays was there, and Ricky Henderson was there, and Aunt Reggie Jackson. I mean, I could sit here all day naming the Hall of Famers that were at this event that I emceed and introduced all these guys onto the field. It was one of the coolest moments of my life. But there are a lot of moments like that as you go along in your baseball journey. And Albert 700 is right there at the top of the list. I mean, just to be involved with something so historic and momentous is unbelievable. It's really hard to believe that you're lucky enough to be in that event in any capacity, let alone having the only TV call for it. It was really, everything was just in the air that night. And going into it, Albert still needed 2 home runs. And there was some precedent. He had hit 499 and 500 in the same game. So you knew there was a chance. If he just hit one even, you would have the opportunity to call some at-bats with 700 on the line. And he hit 700 right away, right back-to-back at-bats. He hit the 2 home runs. And it's just a cool moment. And I'm glad to have been a part of it. I appreciate the fact that I was able to have that call, that it seemed to go well. And to be at Dodger Stadium, sitting in Vince Scully's booth, You really get the
Mm.
grasp of what it was back in those days when it was just Vin in there looking at the mountains, calling Dodger games, and to have that opportunity at Dodger Stadium, it was an unforgettable night, and I'll always appreciate Albert's place in history for what he did that night to hit 700. I mean, 4 guys have only done it, and the first one there was no TV. The third one did it under some circumstances that have kept him out of the Hall of Fame. So it's a big number, and it's a special number that very few have touched.
So you talk about having to hit 2 home runs at night, and I don't know where you come down on scripting's a strong word, but sort of thinking about, okay, if this happens, this is what I'm going to say. Conversely, looking at it as I'm just going to react to the moment. Like, where do you come down on that sort of approach?
Yeah, I really had a blank canvas going into it. All I knew was that I wanted to say 700 pretty quickly. That was it. I talked to Howie Rose, my partner on Mets radio, earlier that week, and I said, I might run into 700 here. What if it happens? How do I call it? And he says, just don't worry about any of it. Just call the home run. Just it could be a game tying home run. Could be some grand slam that gives the Cardinals the lead. Could be just some little wall scraper that you didn't think was going to get out. Just read the moment and react just like you normally would with anything else. And it's pretty much what I did. And we had a Zoom call just like this one earlier in the day with the whole production crew, and the producer and I both really spent some time to kind of go over it in case it happens. Even if we get an at bat, what will it be like? Personally, when I'm doing a game on TV, I don't call a lot of pitches. I don't like to say ball 2, strike 2. I don't like to do all that on a TV broadcast. But what I said to the crew is that if Albert hits a home run early in the game and we get an at bat for 700, I'm going to do the complete opposite. I'm only going to call the pitches, and we're only going to focus on the at bat and what he's doing in that at bat. If he fouls one off, I'll call it. And that's kind of what we did, and everybody was really prepared that if he hit 700, we were going to call it quick and get out, and then watch the pictures, and that's what happened. And it was a great moment. It was captured great by our crew, and it was an exciting moment for Apple TV because they really finished the season, I think, in a really high way, considering that they got Albert's 700th home run.
Yeah, that's a pretty good coup for them, no question about it. Because not only you get it at the time, but you get the sort of, like you said, the replay of it. This was on Apple TV, and which is a whole nother conversation about where it's going, and it's that sort of part of it is interesting about how baseball is trying to reach out to Apple TV, to this. It's like what the NFL is doing, but sort of on the infancy stage. But that's not really what I want to talk about. I want to talk about sort of like you said, the approach of broadcasting. And you've done radio, you've done TV, and I love this conversation because Wayne, like, listen, I'm a writer. I am what I am now. I don't know what I am. Okay. But I've done games, okay, and I've done a few TV games. I've done a ton of like the path of least resistance on radio for the Red Sox, and the way that I always looked at it was, I'm going to fill my head with information, and I'm just going to and we're going to talk, and I'm going to respect the moment and all of that. And obviously, Joe Castiglione in our market's an iconic guy, and he does it a certain way. He's always done it a certain way. And I've learned how he does it. Like you talk about getting every pitch. Like we won't have on general managers in the booth during spring training when big number 97 comes out of the bullpen for the Twins with no name on his back.
Yeah.
Because Joe is like, well, he's going to talk in between. He's going to talk over the pitches, and I got to get the pitches in. It's one way to do that. I get that, and I understand the importance of it and the purity of it and everything else. But I guess the question I'm going to ask you is that, in the last few years, especially with the way people's attention spans have changed, which is undeniable. Do you find yourself having to be more conversational than before? And if you don't, that's fine too. Everybody has a style, but do we need as broadcasters to understand like this has to be more conversational while getting the important stuff in?
Yeah, radio and TV are two totally different ways to broadcast anyway. So it is different as you go from one to the other. But I think I don't know if it's attention span so much as it is these long games, and that's going to be rectified. We think in 2023 they're going to have pitch clock. The game should be shorter, and there may be less need for a lot of that fill in, a lot of that banter between pitches, especially on the radio side, when you're going to have to call the pitches as they come a little bit more quickly. However, in a 3.5 hour, 4 hour game, which there are a lot of them, you need it. You need to be able to be conversational, and you need to be able to talk to your partner. And Howie and I had a really good rapport, and we knew it was like a good double play combination. I mean, it felt like Vizcal and Alomar some nights with the way that we were able to play off of each other, and it was a really special connection I think that we had. And it's something that I think makes the games sound more entertaining and go a little bit quicker in the listeners' minds. Gary, Keith, and Ron do it too on TV. There's a lot of constant banter and conversation on that broadcast. So it's I don't know how it's going to change, if it will change over the next season, because these games on average are going to be a lot shorter. We're going to have a lot more
Right.
2.5 hour games, or less than that even. And if you watch a major league game that goes 2 hours and 15 minutes, it goes fast. And there's going to be a lot less time for some of that stuff.
Yeah,
So
you can't. I
we'll
mean,
see.
you're told not to start a story, right? I mean, don't start a story with 2 outs, and now you're getting into
Right.
this time between pitches, and yeah, it's Courtney. Like, so let me ask you this, Courtney. Of besides Wayne, who is the person because I really enjoy like listening to people talk about how they like listening to, how they like consuming baseball, whether it's on TV or radio. So, Courtney, I will ask you this. Who are some of your favorites when you're like, okay, I like the way they do it?
Joe Davis, without a shadow of a doubt, is one of my favorites. We've talked about this on other podcasts with certain people. He calls the games. He lets the big moments play out. Kind of what Wayne did with Albert Pujols' 700th home run. Sometimes you need to just let the moment play out and not say anything. Joe does a really nice job of that. As far as radio goes, I have a great guy with the White Sox, Len Casper, who is legendary. I mean, he's fantastic. So between those two, and as we've discussed ad nauseum, I've had a lot of opportunities to travel the country with my job. And one of my favorite things to do is listen to home broadcasts. I like to pop on the TV in my hotel and listen to the games. And far and away, Joe Davis is fantastic. And he calls the games, which is really it's kind of what I look for when I'm hearing.
Well, I go back to, and this is on the national stage, but the Bryce Harper home run, right?
Fantastic.
That was like such a, much like the Pujols thing in a different way, but that was such a momentous occasion. And to your point, Courtney, you have to sort of realize, well, how much do I let it breathe? How do I lean into the emotion of it? All of it. And, and I, there was other broadcasters during the postseason on the national broadcast who were very veteran broadcasters who I'm like, just like, enough, man. Yep. Don't stop talking. And everybody has their style, yep. but this is sort of a subjective business. So, yeah, I mean, Wayne, when you were growing up, I know this is sort of a cliche question, but who was the guy that you're like, ah, man, I sat there and listened to that guy. That made me want to do this job.
Well, Harry Carey is the reason why I'm sitting here. There's no question about it. He was number one. The way that he called the games on WGN, it was unbelievable. I mean, you never, as a kid especially, you never really knew that the Cubs were out of it, that they were sitting in fourth place and these games were ultimately meaningless. The games were exciting and they were fun, and the Cubs had a chance to win that day, and Harry treated every day like it was a huge game. And the jokes and the fun in between innings and watching all the crowd shots and Harry reacting to them, I mean, it was unbelievable. And then having Steve Stone with him to really provide the best analysis that I think is in the sport still is Steve Stone. He's great at his job, and I know he was on the Ford Frick finalist list this past
Mhm.
season. He deserves that award if he gets it. Pat Hughes got the award, and as I got older and realized that you can't be Harry, there's only one person like that, and your path to getting to a job like this would not be replicating Harry. Pat Hughes is somebody that I've spent a lot of time listening to and learning from, and he's excellent, and he's someone that I think really helped shape my career at the very beginning of it. There's a lot of good broadcasters now. Joe and I have a really close connection. We started in the Southern League together over a decade ago. We've been friends for a long time. We used to do mock broadcasts together. We would go to major league games at the end of our minor league season, and we would do games together in a booth in Milwaukee and at Wrigley Field. The Cubs and the Brewers were really gracious to give us an empty booth to let us just make a demo tape.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, some demo tapes floating around of me and Joe doing these games together that we used to try to get our first big league jobs. So hopefully Courtney can peel her eyes away from the Dodgers a little bit while the Angels are on, and she can watch both.
Come on, Courtney, let's go.
Hey, listen, I am all in on supporting Wayne. You know that. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Of course. But no, Wayne, like I said, I mean, your work that I've heard with the Mets is fantastic. There really is an art to this, and I think you do an excellent job of it.
Thanks, Courtney.
Oh, anytime.
Oh, look at that. See, everyone's feeling good about themselves. That's what this podcast is. I feel good about the Angels. Everyone's feeling good about the art of broadcasting. We're here to build up. But the last thing, Wayne, is another part of this world that we live in with broadcasting and social media. Obviously, it's part of everything that we do in the world. But it's an interest. You mentioned Harry Carey, and when you're talking, I'm thinking, man, can you imagine what it would have been like with Twitter around with Harry Carey? It would have been crazy. And then and there's so many different ways to look at this. And when broadcasting, it's no exception, where you have a lot of great things can come from social media, including, by the way, Wayne, is that we talk about attention spans and how people are consuming it. Well, and we've said this on the Red Sox broadcast, we have to be able, if Joe Castiglione is talking about falling off a camel and they're like laughing or whatever, we have to basically take that out, throw it in people's face on social media and say, hey, look, this is how entertaining this is. Get here. Then conversely, social media, I've seen broadcasters scrolling through their phone on Twitter like, and they get sort of consumed by it.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, like, how do you view the good and the bad of social media when it comes to broadcasting?
Yeah, I know Harry would have gotten fired after 10 games on the social media world. I don't know if that would have really been a good idea for him, but I think it's helpful. It's helpful to get your highlights out. I feel like it's a better medium for the TV announcers because their highlights are plastered everywhere, and you get to hear somebody's call of a moment right away. You mentioned the Harper home run in the playoffs. It's on social media immediately. I mean, within seconds, really, after it happens. If the Mets do something crazy and Gary Cohen has a great call, it's on social media. Radio, it takes a little bit more to put it together, and you have to smash it together with a highlight, or if something funny happens. I feel like the radio highlights get lost a little bit in the shuffle because it's so much easier to rip the TV highlight and put it on.
I'm going to interrupt you 2 seconds. The two things that drove me nuts, because you reminded me of it, is that in this world of trying to bring attention to this game, you mentioned the radio highlights. Like, it was just recently where we could even put up radio highlights.
Yeah.
Like and that was insane to me. It's like, what do we do? And that's not even getting into the bizarre thing, which was, sorry, local broadcast, you cannot stream the games on your own platform. You have to do it through MLB.com radio, whatever it was. And we're like, are we trying to get people in, or aren't we? And they've changed that, which is, right. but this is part of what we're talking about, is evolving and taking what's in front of us.
Yeah, it should be readily available, and you should be able to get those things out there as quickly as you can. there's just an advantage that TV has over radio with it. And so I think a lot of the good radio calls and a lot of the good radio broadcasts get lost into the ether sometimes. I always felt like, and that's why I'm switching to TV, because I'm sick of being in the background.
Yeah, they have to buy more ties, though. I mean, it's.
I will have to get some more ties, and I will have to do that. You know, the Angels. Some teams just wear polos, which I don't like, but the Angels mostly wear the shirt and the tie. So I will have to.
Have you locked in where you're going to live? That's the most important thing.
I'm getting there. I've honed in on an area, and
are you a beach guy?
Water.
Are you?
It's gonna be. Yeah. I don't know if I am, but we'll find out.
Well, things we will learn. You're not a cornfield guy, but you are potentially a beach guy. There you go.
I'm willing to try. I'm willing to give the beach more of a try than the cornfield.
I'd agree. As a sun worshiper, I would agree.
Oh yes. Listen, it's a good, other than traffic, it's a great place to live. But hey, Wayne, thanks so much, man, for joining us. And we're not only a big fan of the Angels now, we're a big fan of you. We're going to be following you throughout the season. And congratulations on all your success. All great stuff.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm looking forward to this season, and thanks for having me on.